Welcome, Bitcoin friends. It's Bitcoin Mamo. Today we're going to look at the Bitcoin charts, do some TA. We'll look at various time frames, and we'll also take a look at market cipher. So we're going to start here looking at the US stock market. This is the S&P 500 futures chart, and we did just get the new inflation numbers. They are down to 3%. The previous reading was 4%. So another full percent down. The last two readings have dropped quite a bit, and the Federal Reserve does have that 2% target. So we are very close to that now with inflation. And on that news, we have seen the stock market push up here. And we can see that we're not that far off the all-time high here. The stock market has been quite strong ever since March here, having this nice move to the upside without a decent correction. We do have these 3-week order blocks drawn in here, and the next higher up order block is quite a large one. And I think based on those inflation numbers, we may come up into this order block and spend some time in this area. I do think, however, at some stage here, we are going to see a pullback. And if we switch down to the daily time frame, what we see here is we do actually have a gap in the price here. We can see we shot up here and we did gap in the market. And more often than not, these gaps do get filled. So I do think at some stage we come down to fill this gap. And we can see it does lie in that area of the golden pocket. So perhaps we do come back to that golden pocket at some stage. But over to Bitcoin now. This is our overall picture here, and we have talked about this in previous videos. We'll just quickly go over it. We did see a lot of confluence between charting patterns and fib levels here, and basically the overall retracement from the all-time high to the bear market low gives us the 382 fib here, and the retracement from the top of this dead cat bounce to the bear market low gives us this golden pocket area. And they do line up with each other around that 36K area. And we also have the 1.618 fib here, and this is basically looking at this pullback here and doing a fib extension. And like the golden pocket, the 1.618 fib extension is just as important. So that also lines up in this area. And then we also did have this head and shoulders pattern down at the bottom of the bear market. We can see once we broke above the neckline here, this was confirmed. And the measured move of the head and shoulders pattern is just the length from the bottom of the head to the neckline and then placed at the neckline. And we saw that target is also around that 35, 36K area. And then we did also look at this AB equals CD pattern here with these white dotted lines. Basically, when we have a move to the upside and we retrace to the 0.5 fib, if you did fib this out, this would be the 0.5 fib level on this move. When we do pull back to that 0.5 fib, this AB equals CD pattern becomes much more valid. And basically these are the same length lines. We just put it at the bottom of this pullback. And this has a target in line with those fib levels. And also looking at the VPVR here, we do see that there is a spike in the VPVR once we get to these levels. So that adds to a point of confluence here where we may see some resistance at this key level. There's also that gap in the VPVR here, above 30,700 approximately. And putting all that together, I do think we come up to this target, but it doesn't mean that we can't spend more time going sideways in a range here before we see that move to the upside. So that's basically most of the things we looked at in previous videos on a more macro analysis and the next possible target. But just looking back on the two previous videos, I did mention I think we're going to spend time going sideways here. There was no clear indication with the indicators, and we have pretty much just gone sideways. And one of the things we were looking at here is we could possibly pull back. We did look at some targets if we do pull back, but I mentioned it's not clear and we could just spend a lot of time going sideways before seeing that next move. But we were also looking at the RSI here. We did notice we have this triangle pattern just connecting the lows on the RSI and these two highs. Obviously, we had this breakout here. It lines up with the breakout from this falling wedge pattern. And then we saw that big move to the upside. And the previous video, the RSI was somewhere around here. And we mentioned perhaps we need to come back to this trend line to retest it. And we can see we did get quite close to it. We haven't quite touched it yet. So perhaps this is still something to watch out for. Perhaps we come back to this trend line and look for support where there was previous resistance. And again, we are on the daily time frame here. If we do pull up the daily EMA ribbon, we also mentioned on a pullback after breaking this ribbon, generally on the first pullback, we do get support from the ribbon and then we do see another push higher. But we can see the ribbon has come up here. We did actually touch it here on this pullback and we have seen a bounce from that, even though we are still going sideways. I do think this ribbon does act as support, even if we dip into it a bit here. As mentioned, most of the time after breaking the ribbon on the first pullback, we do see support from it and a push higher. And one thing to look at here is the stochastic RSI. It did cool off completely here while we were going sideways. And we mentioned we need to see it come back up and start closing above this 20 line, this white dotted line. We are pretty much on that at the moment. But if we can start coming above this line, it does give more confidence that we may see that next move to the upside. The interesting thing about that stochastic RSI, if we actually shift now, this is the Bitcoin futures chart on CME. We can see, even though on the spot price chart, it already had cooled off completely, the futures chart was actually quite higher up here, and it did take a few more days to come down to the low. So it does feel like the futures chart is catching up here on the indicators with the spot price chart. And so this could take a bit longer as we do curve around at the bottom here and again look to get above this 20 level. So I would like to see it on both the spot price chart and the futures chart to give confidence on that move to the upside. Otherwise, we could just spend time still going sideways here. Perhaps we have a quick dip down and then come back up. That's also a possibility. And like the spot price chart, we also have these trend lines on the RSI. We can see there is room to come down before we possibly test this trend line for support. And back to the spot price chart for Bitcoin now. What I've got drawn in here are all the order blocks just within this range. There are more higher up and more below here, but these are the most important ones. We've got some from this previous price action where we are going sideways. We are in a similar range to this previous price action. But if we do actually zoom in here, what we see is there is a lot of order blocks in this area. The brighter the blue color here, it means there's order blocks within order blocks. So there are several order blocks within the same area here, and these can make these more important levels. And we can see how we have dipped into this group of order blocks several times on these pullbacks, and they have acted as support. We're yet to close below the bottom order block here, below 29.8K. So for the meantime, we are getting support from this clump of order blocks, but we can see we are struggling to close above this order block above 31K. We did have one close above. Generally, we like to go above it, come back and retest it for support, and then close back above it to show it has acted as support. But let's move on to the weekly time frame now. Again, we've got those fib levels drawn in. We've also drawn in the relevant weekly order blocks here in our range. We also had this trend line connecting these two highs, which acted as resistance for several months here. We saw once we closed above it, we had this big move to the upside. And we also have this trend line of support just connecting the lows. But what we can see, similar to that daily chart, with this weekly order block here, it has acted as support as we have pulled into it on each of these weekly candles. We do have a thin order block down here at 28K. This may become relevant if we do pull back here. But for the time being, this is acting as support and we are pretty much just going sideways here in this range. Just looking at the stochastic RSI, we have been moving to the upside here. We don't want to see this start to turn around and come back down. If we do start seeing it have a negative slope here, then perhaps we may pull back to this order block, or even at the worst case, back to this trend line. But I do think we make higher lows here, and perhaps we just spend time in a range here for a bit longer before we see that next move to the upside. I do also have this blue box on the RSI drawn in. We've talked about that in the previous videos. If we just look at the previous cycles here, basically when we're in a bull market here, we can see on the RSI, we pull back to this blue box, which is basically between a 50 and a 55 reading. So the middle of the RSI level. We see on all these pullbacks, this blue box acts as support during that whole bull run all the way up. And in the bear market here, it acted as resistance all the way down. And we see with our current bull market here, coming off the lows, we got above this blue box. It acted as support on these pullbacks. We pushed higher and we did pull back into it again here and we got support. We did push higher And the same thing, if we do pull back here and we come down low enough, I think this will act as support and will push higher. And the other thing we've been watching is the weekly EMA ribbon here. Generally, once the bull market starts, we break above this weekly EMA ribbon, and then we look for this ribbon to flip. So the yellow smaller moving average gets above the higher moving averages here. And generally, once it does that on pullbacks, it does act as support, and then we do continue higher. And we can show that with the previous cycle here back in 2017. We can see coming out of the bear market, we broke above the weekly EMA ribbon. It flipped. The yellow line went above the other colored lines, and on pullbacks, it acted as support on all of these pullbacks as we went up in the bull market. So going sideways here isn't a bad thing because it allows this ribbon to move to the upside, and the longer we go sideways, the more shallow the pullback will be. But again, this is a week by week thing with these candles. And we can also look at the 2-week time frame here. Everything's pretty much similar. We do have an order block higher up here and an order block lower down at 27K. But nothing's really changed here. We've just spent time going sideways. We do open a new 2-week candle at the beginning of next week, but there's nothing really significant here. We can see the RSI does look good here. It's trending up. There isn't any bearish divergence between these points. But if we do look at the weekly time frame, we do actually have bearish divergence here. We can see lower highs on the RSI while making higher highs on the price. So there is actually bearish divergence here, but we can see on the 2-week time frame there isn't. So I'm not too worried about that. This divergence could play out with a pullback, as we said, possibly only down to maybe midway of this range. At worst case, we come to the trend line. But again, I think we get support of that weekly EMA ribbon also. But really, that's about it. We are just going sideways. There's not too much more to talk about. I will quickly look at Market Cipher. So here we are on Market Cipher. This is the 4-hour time frame. We did just get a red dot confirmed, but we can see how choppy it has been here. I think there is big selling here at around 31K whenever we get up to that point, but then there is also support buying down here at the low 30K range. So we're just ranging for the time being and pretty much liquidating anyone who is massively leveraged here. The 6-hour also has a red dot, and it will be confirmed on the next candle. The 12-hour did get a green dot here on Monday, did get confirmed on Tuesday. We saw a move to the upside from that, but it looks like it's starting to close off here. Perhaps we'll see a red dot coming up soon. The money flow does look good though here. The green wave here, so money is flowing in here. I think it's just getting absorbed here by some whales selling at 31K, and I will show you something that backs that up. And we see the daily also had a green dot here. It did get confirmed on today's candle, and we have also re-entered that green money flow after being in the red money flow for quite a long time here. So things are looking good on this indicator. I just think there is a massive selling here at 31K, and until the buyers can chew through that, I don't think we'll see that move to the upside. The 2-day did get a red dot. It was confirmed on Saturday. The 3-day doesn't have a red dot yet, but it is very close. The next candle is on Saturday, but we could see that red dot appear and then get confirmed by Saturday. And the 4-day doesn't have a red dot yet. The 3-day is the next one to watch for that red dot. So some of these time frames like the 2-day, 3-day, 4-day, and so on are starting to look a bit more bearish. We do have to wait for those red dots and for them to get confirmed though, because we can curve like this and then see a move to the upside and we don't get that red dot. And the weekly is still looking okay here. It does look like it's got a few more weeks to go before there may be a red dot here. Interesting though, we have crossed into the green money flow here after all these weeks in the red money flow since April of last year. So we spent all that time in the red money flow here. We're just starting to cross back into the green. And the 2-week time frame did get its green dot confirmed on the 3rd of July. So the weekly and the 2-week still look okay. It's just the 2 and the 3-day and possibly the 4-day. If we do see red dots there, it may eventually build up and come onto the weekly and eventually the 2-week time frame. But again, that takes a while to play out. And I do think we probably still just end up going sideways for a while here. And just to show you what I mean about the selling at 31K here, this is showing the Binance spot exchange where all the orders are, and the darker the red, the heavier the orders. So we can see going across here, there's about 214 Bitcoin for sale at that 31K area, and that's in this part here at the end. So there was a lot more Bitcoin for sale here. And basically, this is going back to the 10th of July here, where we did have this run up from about 30K to 31K. The bigger the circles here, the bigger the buying, and the same with the selling. But we saw this spike in the volume. We ran up here. There were these selling orders here at 31K. It hit the 31K, even with strong buying, and then it did get pushed back down quite aggressively to 30,200. And then we saw those orders disappear, and then they started to build up again. This is back from 11th of July, so we can skip ahead. This is 12 hours of footage here on this video. And basically we can see there's 265 Bitcoin here for sale in this area. So there is more selling orders here at 31K. Again, this is the 11th of July. And if we skip here, this was about 14 hours ago. We can see how this line has gotten even darker red. And we did try to push up here. I think we might have wicked close to 31K. We can see there's 370 Bitcoin now for sale on the spot order books, so not leverage. And we can see whenever it looks like we're coming up here, the amount selling is increasing at this level. And here we can see again, jumping ahead, this is probably about 4 hours ago. We can see we tried to push to that 31K area. There was buying here and pushing the price up, and then we did get pushed back down. So there does seem to be this resistance here around 31K. And we see we can go live now. So this is the live order books here on the Binance Spot Exchange. We see there's 362 Bitcoin here being sold at that 31K level. So I think we have to chew through this resistance here. Has to be enough buyers to fill all these sell orders, and then we can move up higher. But just something I've noticed here, this YouTube channel is called Live Bookmapping, and I will put a link in the description if you want to look at it. Obviously, Binance has the most volume, so it's the best one to look at. And again, it's the spot orders, and it just shows a heat map and not the leveraged orders. But I think that's about all. Hope you enjoyed that analysis. Again, not too much to report on here, just sideways action. We'll have to let this play out for a bit longer. See if we do come back to this trend line on the RSI. Perhaps we hug it for a bit, and perhaps we do see a pullback into this daily EMA ribbon. And I'll also be watching the futures chart for the stochastic RSI to come down and curve around. And this could take several days here till we see that. We could also come back to the trend line here on the futures chart. So I think pretty much more sideways action unless we do see that dip down. We'll have to let it play out. There is a lot of support here with all of these order blocks as mentioned. And if we do start closing daily candles below about 29,780, then perhaps we do see that pullback to lower prices. And again, if we start doing that, I'll look at those targets. But we did have a quick look at that in previous videos. But I think that's about all. Thanks for watching on Bitcoin Mamo. I'll see you next time. Bye.